Everyone knows Bruno Mars the performer, but nobody knew the real Bruno. He was the kid who performed 1,000 shows before age 10, the teenager who slept in abandoned zoos, and the man who lost everything to gambling. At 39, Bruno decided to tell the whole story, not just about the money he owes or Jessica walking away, but also about the childhood trauma that pushed him toward fame, the addiction that nearly destroyed his career, and the dark family secret he carried for decades. What he revealed would change everything. Bruno Mars was just 4 years old when most children were still learning to read. While others played with toys, he was already performing 2 shows a night, 5 days a week. His family had a musical act in Wiki, and he quickly became their star. They called him Little Elvis because he wore a tiny glitter jumpsuit and mimicked Elvis Presley's moves as if he had been born to do it. He was so good that in 1990, at just 5 years old, he stole the spotlight at the Aloha Bowl halftime show in front of 40,000 people. At 6, he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show. Then, in 1992, he landed a small role in Honeymoon in Vegas and made $600 for one day's work. Later, he joked that it was his first Vegas residency. By the time he turned 10, he had already performed nearly 1,000 shows. That kind of beginning builds something deep inside, and maybe that's why, years later, when he was rehearsing for the Super Bowl halftime show, he said it felt like recess. But the shine didn't last. At 12, Bruno's parents divorced, and the family act fell apart. Suddenly, there was no stage, no lights, and no money. Bruno, his father, and his brother slept wherever they could, sometimes in a yellow '93 Cadillac, sometimes on rooftops in Wiki, and even once in an abandoned bird zoo where peacocks screamed all night. Without a real bathroom, they would sneak into hotel pools just to take showers. Dinner was often nothing more than Spam musubi from 7-Eleven. For 5 months, they had no electricity, and Bruno practiced guitar by moonlight because they couldn't afford amps. At school, kids teased him for wearing thrift store clothes, but he kept pushing. He earned $75 a night impersonating Michael Jackson, using the money to pay for demo tapes and bus fare. That struggle hardened him. In 2003, music labels heard his demo and decided he should be the next Ricky Martin. They wanted him to sing in Spanish, even though he didn't write in Spanish. He resisted. He didn't want to be a label's idea of a Latin artist. Instead, he chose a name from childhood, Bruno, after wrestler Bruno Sammartino. He added Mars because a girl once told him he was so confident he must be from Mars. In June 2003, at 18, he moved to Los Angeles with just $600, 3 demo CDs, and the name Bruno Mars written on his luggage tag. During his first year, he cycled through 4 different living arrangements, including a 40-a-night motel on Sunset and a cramped Koreatown studio shared with 6 other guys. To survive, he lied his way into a DJ job on Van Nuys Boulevard, even though he had never touched DJ equipment. He was fired after 2 nights, but the $75 he earned kept his phone from being shut off. That summer, there were weeks when he survived, only on 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. Then, in February 2004, Motown offered him a contract. It was only 3 pages long. Bruno joked that he had seen breakfast menus thicker than that. The label didn't know what to do with him. They wanted a Latin pop star. 9 months later, they dropped him without releasing a single song. It was humiliating. He had already told his family back home that he'd been signed. But in the end, that failure turned out to be a stroke of luck. Another artist dropped by Motown at the same time was Philip Lawrence, who became Bruno's close friend. They promised each other they would create music no record label could ignore. By 2006, both men were broke but determined. They wrote songs in the back of Philip's beat-up '99 Toyota Corolla parked outside a small Hollywood studio. Ari Levine, who ran the studio, had equipment. Bruno and Philip had ideas. They would buy him burritos from 7-Eleven as payment. Whenever a chord or beat clicked, they would shout, "That's a yes me," and soon called themselves the Smeezingtons. They worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, analyzing hit songs and learning to craft their own. They studied more than $1,000 songs before ever releasing one. Then Bruno's sister, Hay, stepped in. Working in fashion in West Hollywood, she slipped one of his demo CDs to Mike Lynn, who worked for Dr. Dre. At first, Mike nearly tossed it. The voice sounded strange, almost chipmunk-like. But at 43 seconds in, Bruno hit a high note that made Mike stop and rewind. Impressed, he flew Bruno out for a meeting at Record One Studios. Though no deal came out of it, the fact that someone important had noticed gave Bruno a real boost. In Los Angeles, being seen by the right person could change everything. To survive, they ended up selling a song they had originally written for themselves. The track, titled Lost, went to Menudo for $20,000. That money was just enough to keep them from being kicked out of their place. But the real breakthrough came when they wrote the chorus for Flo Rida's Right Round. That single went straight to #1, selling 636,000 downloads in its first week, a digital record at the time. Not long after, they penned Nothing On, U for B.O.B., which turned into yet another massive hit. By the time Bruno released Just the Way You Are in 2010, songs he had co-written were already responsible for more than 15 million downloads worldwide. Bruno Mars's rise was not an overnight explosion. His solo career began quietly with a short EP titled It's Better If You Don't Understand. Released on May 11, 2010, it barely made a ripple, just 13 minutes long, containing 4 songs, and by the end of 2011, it had sold only 27,000 copies in the U.S., small, almost forgettable. Yet within those 4 tracks were the seeds of something much larger. Only 5 months later, Bruno came back with Doo-Wops and Hooligans in October 2010, and this time, the impact was seismic. Created on a modest $70,000 budget and without borrowed samples, the album exploded, going 7x platinum in the U.S. and surpassing 15 million sales worldwide by 2020. In the UK, it stayed on the official albums chart for an incredible 400 weeks, nearly 8 years, outlasting classics like Abbey Road and Thriller. The singles cemented his presence. His debut, Just the Way You Are, entered the Billboard Hot 100 on August 7, 2010, and shot to #1 in only 8 weeks. It held on for 48 weeks, went 13x platinum, and sold 6.7 million downloads in the U.S. alone, making it one of the 25 biggest digital tracks ever. Then came Grenade, which at its peak pulled in 559,000 downloads in a single week, the 8th highest weekly total in music history at the time. It didn't just reach #1 in America, it topped charts in 15 countries. Between January and March 2011, Grenade hit #1 on Billboard 3 separate times, an achievement only 5 other songs had managed. By March, Bruno already had 2 songs certified over 5 million in U.S. sales, something only Lady Gaga had done before him. The industry couldn't ignore it. At the Grammys, Bruno earned 7 nominations in his rookie year. When work began on Unorthodox Jukebox, the label expected a tight, polished dance album, but Bruno and his team had bigger ideas. They stretched the budget and experimented across 9 genres, everything from the disco sparkle of Treasure to the gritty rock of Gorilla to reggae stylings in Show Me. The label panicked. An internal memo warned that radio wouldn't play something this chaotic. Bruno refused to compromise, even sacrificing 4% of his future royalties to fund live horns and vintage gear. His gamble paid off. Within a year, Unorthodox Jukebox had sold 6 million copies worldwide. Critics were stunned. Spin magazine described it as like flipping through a jukebox at 3 a.m., chaotic but magnetic. And the blueprint Bruno laid down, genre-hopping, fearless pop, would later inspire artists like Dua Lipa and Harry Styles. The 2014 Grammys brought even more recognition. Unorthodox Jukebox won Best Pop Vocal Album, along with 2 other awards. Behind the scenes, engineers revealed that its songs contained more than 120 separate audio tracks each, the most of any nominee that year, even surpassing Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. That same night, during his performance of Gorilla, Bruno stirred up minor controversy when someone filed an FCC complaint over a 0.6-second shot of him thumping his chest in imitation of a gorilla. No fines were issued, but the incident landed him in the 2015 Guinness World Records as the shortest televised act ever to trigger an obscenity review, and in the days that followed, sales spiked once again. Unorthodox Jukebox shot up 171% on the Billboard 200. It was one of the biggest Grammy Week boosts. That same night, Spotify reported a 300+% streaming spike for the song. Almost a year after its release, the track had climbed back near the top of the charts. Fans had long wondered what AP stood for. Bruno finally explained it. After Party Tango. He said it came from a night in Buenos Aires in 2019, when he and Rosé danced until sunrise. There's even a video of it, but it remains locked inside Bruno's phone. Only Rihanna, he joked, knows how to unlock it. By August 2025, the song had been streamed more than 3 billion times, and the duet added 48 million in merchandise sales to Blackpink's world tour. Bruno's influence across genres only kept expanding. Yet behind all the lights and records, something more personal was unfolding. Back in spring 2011, long before the Grammys and mega tours, Bruno met Jessica Cabin at a hotel restaurant in New York. She had just come from a modeling audition. He had just finished a show. They locked eyes for 40 minutes. He didn't move. Then finally, he walked over. They talked until 2 a.m., long after the chairs were stacked and the lights had gone out. Within a year, she left everything and moved across the country to be with him. At first, she slept on an air mattress while he toured the world. Slowly, they built a life together. By 2014, they had a home in Studio City and a dog named Geronimo. Bruno rarely spoke about her. Once, in an interview, he called her "my rock" and quickly moved on. Even with the heartbreaking ballad "When I Was Your Man," he never explained much, only saying it felt like bleeding on tape. Many assumed he wrote it during a rough patch with Jessica. She rarely appeared at public events, just 3. Red carpets in 13 years, and then nothing. By late 2024, fans noticed something unusual. Jessica's anniversary posts had vanished. A few days later, Bruno flew to Tokyo alone, wearing the gold necklace she had given him, but with her initials turned backward to hide them. Then in January 2025, a fan commented on Jessica's beach photo asking if she and Bruno had split. She replied, "I will always celebrate and be happy for all of his continued achievements." Just 15 words, but they were enough to set the internet ablaze. People began digging. Jessica had spent Christmas with her parents in San Juan. Bruno played New Year's Eve in Las Vegas. It was their first December apart in more than a decade. Sources claimed they were living separate lives, while others said he tried to fix things, but instead extended his Vegas shows. Yet the strange part remained. They never confirmed a breakup. She still follows him on Instagram. He still likes her posts about her fashion line. They still co-own the house. Some say she stays in the guest room when she's in town. Others even claimed she was spotted backstage at one of his shows in May, though no photos ever surfaced. The spark that ignited everything came on March 15, 2024. News Nation aired a segment, one without a single named source, but the claim was explosive enough to spread like wildfire. According to the report, Bruno Mars owed around $50 million to MGM Resorts after piling up gambling debt. To pay it off, he was allegedly working through his Park MGM residency shows. Within hours, the internet erupted. Gossip blogs repeated the number without hesitation. Reddit threads spun wild theories, insisting that MGM practically owned him. Talk shows picked it up too. Even Shannon Sharpe told his audience that he'd heard Bruno once lost $17 million in a single night at a blackjack table. True or not, The narrative was irresistible. A global pop star, famous for singing about gold and riches secretly buried under a mountain of casino debt. It was made for viral headlines. Within 2 days, the hashtag Bruno broke spread everywhere. The phrase, Bruno Mars 50 mil debt appeared in over 4 million Google results. And yet, it all traced back to a single anonymous claim. That very day, MGM Resorts struck back quickly. No vague PR talk, just a clear, direct statement. They told Forbes and Billboard that Bruno owed them nothing. Their exact words, no debt. They even stressed that their relationship was based on mutual respect, reminding the world that Bruno was one of the greatest performers alive. But this wasn't only about saving his reputation. MGM had much more at stake. If the public believed their main headliner was drowning in debt, it could rattle investors. It could even raise legal concerns. Some whispered that MGM had planted the story just to sell tickets. But their denial was so strong that within 3 days, major outlets like Variety repeated it word for word, and MGM's stock price never flinched. Wall Street, it seemed, believed them. Bruno, meanwhile, chose humor over formality. During his Park MGM show on April 12th, he looked out at the crowd and said, completely straight-faced, "Ever since they said I'm on the hook for 50 mil, my phone been dry. Where my friends at when I'm up?" The audience roared. That moment went viral, clipped and shared more than 6.8 million times on TikTok within a single day. Then, on January 28, 2025, Spotify announced he had just hit 150 million monthly listeners. Bruno reposted the milestone with a caption, "Keep streaming, I'll be out of debt in no time." Just 2 weeks later, he shocked fans by appearing on stage with Blackpink's Rosé at Sophie Stadium, opening with the line, "Almost out of debt." That moment pulled in 32 million Instagram views in just 3 days. Every time he joked about it, the story lost its sting. And every time he spoke, people amplified it. It became free publicity for his shows, for his music, for his brand. Still, there was a reason the rumor took hold so quickly. The number, 50 million, sounded outrageous but not impossible. In Vegas, high rollers often gamble $50,000 on a single blackjack hand. If Bruno lost that amount just 1,000 times across a few years, the total would hit $50 million. Gambling experts pointed out that the math checked out. And Bruno himself had once admitted he started gambling before. He was even of legal age and had at least once lost everything in a poker game. That detail made the rumor feel painfully believable. Add in his massive earnings. He reportedly makes $1.5 million per show, roughly $90 million a year, and it wasn't hard for fans to picture him as a modern-day Sinatra, winning and losing fortunes beneath the same neon lights of Las Vegas.